Parshas Kedoshim in Chutz La'aretz and Moyer in Eretz Yisrael. In the topic of Tzadik Be'Raloi, there's a sugya to discuss. Chazal tell us that Tzadikim, Hashem is medaktek aleim kechut asaya, which is usually taich that Hashem would punish them for the smallest failure, for the smallest aveira, like a chut asaya, like a hair. If they would do what they're not supposed to, they would immediately get punished. And Gemara says some stories. How could it be that tzaddik had this oynish? The answer is because he's a tzaddik. And because he's a tzaddik, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu medaktek aleim kechut asaya. And we mentioned the question, the number one question that every person would ask or think or be scared to ask, which was, if that's the case, so why should I try, or why should I b'chlal be a tzaddik? It doesn't pay. It doesn't pay to be a tzaddik. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medaktek aleim kechut asaya. But the question is really deeper. The question is, it doesn't make sense. In Chazal there's a concept called, it cannot be that choytei niskar. It can't be that a person that's doing what they're not supposed to is gaining off the deal. So many times we have that. People pay taxes and other things. You do the wrong thing, and then you gain double. It doesn't make any sense. So why would Hashem set up the Torah in a way that, okay, you're a regular guy, okay, we'll get over it, it's fine. Oh, you're a tzaddik. Okay, now come here, and I want to talk to you. What's the story with you? And every detail, this wasn't exactly the way it's supposed to, this wasn't. It needs explanation on the simplest level. It needs to be simple to answer in order a person should be satisfied and want to be a tzaddik. Really chalash to be a tzaddik. So we need to have a deeper understanding of this concept. It's very, very important. Now, in order to enter this world and to explore the topic, we'll say some stories, which give a bit of understanding. It opens up something else, which we're going to bring back to this topic. It says in the Sefer of Chaim Vital, as Yoel said, which was yesterday, Lamed Nisan, in Shara Kavonis, he says a story. He talks about that when a person wears tefillin, they're not allowed to think about anything else. You're not allowed to be Masir Das. The mind is constantly supposed to be remembering that you're wearing tefillin right now. And then he says, Ro'o Moiri, my Rebbe Da Rizal, saw Chacham Echad Godel. He once saw a big tzaddik, a big Chacham, Mikama Shonim Midor Shalefneze. He saw this tzaddik, but this tzaddik had left the world years and years before. But the Arizal saw him, and means Arizal was able to see what's going on with this neshama upstairs in Himmel. And he saw Shoyu Manishim Oisoi, they would punish him when they wanted to elevate him to a higher oilam, to a higher level. This neshama was going from madrega to madrega, closer and closer to Hashem. So once, when this neshama, which has left this world, maybe a few hundred years before that, but right now that neshama was continuing to climb the ladder to enter a new world, and then this neshama was being punished on details of mitzvahs that the neshama didn't do the way it was supposed to. And then he explains, because the first time, that means when the neshama just goes away from the world and goes to the olam elyon, the neshama wouldn't get punished for missing this or that detail. But now that neshama wanted to go even further, so there's another din, and now the neshama, there's a mishpat, there's a case, a court case on the neshama to see little details which are even more sensitive. And then he says, kibachol pam upam, because every time when the neshama goes from one madrega to the next, even after a few years, then we look into, with a microscope, little details that weren't done properly. And he says, because the higher the neshama goes, it's important to take off sensitive little pitsy failures that they run to the neshama, and that's why it says in the Gemara that tzadikim don't have menucha b'olam haba, because the tzadikim always want to go further and further, and because of that, they always have to take care of more baggage. And he says that the story with this chacham was that he was saying Volatility, and while he was saying the words in the end of Volatility, we ask Hashem, we shouldn't be working for nothing. It means a person should actually reach their goals that they want to reach. So it says that this chacham was concentrating in the words so strong, in the words of davening, that he forgot about the tefillin. That's what it says. Machmas kavanosu b'tefillah. And that's why he got this punishment. And then it says, and also one other oynish was because one time b'yom Shabbos, a bit of offer, some sand, got into his shoe, and he was walking from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, and there was a bit of sand in the shoe, and he got an oynish. That says in Shar Kavanon and in Pri Eitz Chaim. Now, what does it say here? It talks about what happens in the next world, but it says a concept that even the biggest tzadikim, they go further and further and further. And as they want to enter a world that's even higher and even a bigger madrega, they must take care of previous zachen that happened. It's like putting on a mask when you go into the ICU. Now, people put on masks in the street. Or when people are driving cars on their own, you watch that 2 masks. But for real, being that there could be bacteria, there could be whatever it is, so even when people go into the industry of...
When they make the silicone chips, right, you have to be so clean and you have to wear special suits.
Even when the chips...
the tiniest thing can contaminate the whole...
Contaminate it. But what's the pshat? The pshat because it's sensitive. Mm-hmm. So as an neshama wants to have a closer connection to Hashem, which we have no hasoga because it goes to no end, it has to get even more clean, even more. There's such a concept. Okay, a concept. Now let's continue to another story, which the Klozim Rebbe said about the first Belzerov, the Sar Shalom from Belz. He once said this story. He says the Sar Shalom once went out of his house and he looked up to the sky and he saw a cloud just passing by, a passing cloud. And he got very serious. And he showed with his finger and he says, do you know what that was? He says, in that cloud there's a Tana, Reb Reuven ben Istroibliya, a name of a Tana which is mentioned I think only once in the Gemara. And he saw what? Everybody's like, what are you talking about? So he said, it says in the Gemara Masechtas Meila that once there was the Goyim, the Melucha made a Gzeira. There was a Gzeira on Yidden that they can't keep Torah and mitzvahs. And this Reb Reuven ben Estrebi went and he took a haircut like the Goyim, which is shaved from the front and a lot of hair in the back, exactly like they do it. And the reason why he took such a haircut was because he didn't want that they should recognize that he's a Yid. It was important for him because of what he's doing. He needed to talk to the king, to whoever had that Gzeira, for only because to be Mevatel the Gzeira. That was the whole reason. So he needed to do that, and he succeeded. Ola b'yodo levatel es hagzeiros, and he saved Klal Yisrael. And even though this Heilige Tana had a heter to do it, and the Chachamim told him to do it, but because this is the Belzerah, because the Tzadikim keep on going higher and higher, Michayil el Choyil, and right now the Belzerah says, how many years later? 1,500 years later, or something like that. He said, right now this Tana went to a Heichel Gevoya, to such a high Heichel. He says that that's what's in the way. That's in the way of it. And there's a psak bebezel shalmala that he has to correct that. But how do you correct it when you're up there? So usually a person would have to come back to a Gilgul to this world again. But you don't have to get back, because he was such a Tana Kodesh, he didn't have to be in his Galgal. But the tikkun was that it says here almost 2,000 years later, he says he's just going to go through the world once, just like that. So he's in the cloud, and that was his tikkun. That's the Belz Rav said. He had to do it in the Neshamas all the time. The Sar Shalom from Belz was very busy with tikkunei and Neshamas. So he said, this is what's happening with that Neshama right now. Scary story. But once again, it illustrates a point. This is the concept. A concept that the Neshama keeps on going higher and higher, and this is what happens. I saw another story, which is brought in the Gemara, about Rav Loza Reb Shimon, and Yiron, the son of Reb Shimon, is in the same Ma'ir, Rav Loza Reb Shimon. The Gemara says about Metzia that he was 22 years in the attic. As it says in the Gemara, they didn't bury him. He was there, and he came every Friday night to make Kiddush. But one time, and there was no worms, there was no Rimo V'Soileya. One day, his wife saw that there's a worm crawling out of the ear, and she was scared that maybe right now it's finished, and she has to bury him, because it means that they could have a power over him. So he came to her in the Cholim, it's all Gemara, and he said that this is for a oynish, because one time I saw that people were embarrassing a Talmud Chacham, and he actually did protest. He was moicha, but it wasn't enough. So right now, something is happening, and so people ask, but why did it happen after 22 years? So some answer this answer. The Fida Madrega that Blazer Reb Shimon was reaching right now, this had to happen. So now, let's go back to the concept that we're learning. There's a piece of Arve Nachal. The Arve Nachal, let's see if I have the exact Maramokim where this Arve Nachal is. It would be in Kufchol Shabbos Shuva Drush Beis. No, but I'm mentioning because he says it clearly, what the answer to the question. After all the above, he gives the answer to the question. The Arve Nachal says that how could it be that the Rishonim wouldn't get punished on small details? He says it's a total mistake. Of course they get punished. It's just that they're not up to there yet. It's the same concept that we're learning in the Arizal and all that. This is the concept. The concept is, and he gives a marshal fit. He says, if you have a beged, which is beautiful, new, right when something falls, we mentioned it last week, with a little bitty stain, you see the stain, there's a problem. But if you have an old, worn out beged, and it's dirty from top to bottom, he says, you're not going to see stains on it. You don't see. So he says, the concept is that every neshama needs to eventually reach shleimus. And it goes and goes and goes, reach shleimus. Now the tzaddik is up to a level right now which they're up to taking away stains. So tzadikim, because they're clean. Rosh is not up to there. So you don't see all that. So Hashem is busy trying to take care of the bigger. Now, later on, whenever the Rosh is going to reach that level, if it's in this world or it's in the coming world, then we'll take care of that. But the Pasuk not there. That's the Arve Nachal. That's how he explains it. Which gives us a simple answer before we dig into this, to understanding it deeper. The Arve Nachal says, you're saying it's not fear. The tzaddik doesn't have a different anhoga. Tzaddik doesn't have a different anhoga. It's just the tzaddik is already up to further. When you're up to further, then that's the situation. The Rosh is behind, but the Rosh is waiting for the Rosh. One day, it's every Yid in the Sham is going to reach a higher madrega of shleimus.
I was just thinking that could it be shaykh that a person is a tzaddik in a certain mitzvah.
Sure.
I forget who explained, there are stories about certain people who came back in a dream because they owed a little bit of money. So the person asked, so why isn't this happening every day? Right, Reuben Begezel said, because those people were very medactic in their lives to be careful with that, so they get the schus, because that's the one thing holding back in that.
Yes. It's clearly, I don't remember on the second the Maramokum, but it says clear that a person could be in a certain area that Hashem talks to him in that area more because he's already up to the next level. But the other areas, it's a very big part of this concept when we want to bring this concept to us as regular people to understand it and to be able to use it. So this is very important. But before we get to that, I want to get back to it very soon. We need to in our minds to stop categorizing the tzadikim and then the Rishoyim. It means nothing's talking about us. It's only like the tzadikim have this, they're Chaim Vital, and then the Rishoyim. Once we learn the Sa'ar v'Nachal, we're all in the pool. Because the concept is that you don't have to have a name. It's not about having a name of a tzaddik or Rosh. I don't care, that's not the point. It's one concept, fits all. Which is that, let's remind ourselves, as we spoke about in the previous year, Yisurim is a conversation Hashem is having with the person. I'm mentioning again that there's other understandings to Yisurim in addition to the concept of conversation, besides Hashem is telling the person, because Bahadi Kashid Rahman Alomali, we can't forget that there's so many reasons that we can't comprehend, we can't understand all the reasons why things are happening. But one of the topics is that Hashem is talking to a person with love and helping them go weiter to be able to succeed in life. So when we're talking about that inyan of Yisurim, it's important, and which is a conversation, which is not, Hashem is not punishing, upset at the person. Hashem is bringing the person closer. Come, let me help you get rid of another, whatever it is, and come even closer. So the cheshbon, the Rabbi Nachman says, the cheshbon is going to be that it doesn't make any sense when a person is so far to talk to him about things that he's not in that madrega, and I can't have a conversation with you about it. We could talk about a Rebbe and a Talmud. You could talk about a father and a child. They say, even the practical aspect of it, you have to choose your battles. So you're not going to talk to your child about a detail when you have to talk to him business. He should get up in the morning. Let's talk about, once we will be on the same page, then we could talk about that Negavasa should be actually the other way. It doesn't make a sense. Even practically it doesn't make sense. Because there's no conversation going on when a person is not here. Right? That makes sense, right? It's simple. So this idea, this concept that Abba Nachal is saying, that if someone is not yet in the matziv that you could talk to him about such detail, so Hashem doesn't talk to him about such detail. So it's more on the bigger picture. Let's talk about the bigger picture. Once a person goes, Hashem would continue on. Now let's go weiter. Hashem never gives up on anybody. And this continues in this world, and it continues into the future. It just keeps on continuing because Hashem wants to bring every neshama to the end.
And the underlying assumption is that the neshama by its teva wants to reach its first, wants its tikkun.
The neshama wants, and the neshama is chalshing for it. The neshama is begging for it. It's just the guf that's upset. It's very upset. Like, what are you doing? I was in the middle of doing something. You're just in the way. But so this is really giving some. It gives how do you call it? Context to the that it's not such a far concept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is medakti b'chut asar. It just makes sense that Hashem should go and talk to him on that level. The same like we see by people that this is how it works. Now this explains what you mentioned, that And each and every one of us, Hashem runs conversations with people, lefi, where they're up to, and they have different areas in their life. It's mamash poshet. People have areas that they are further, and people have that they need to begin. And when Hashem is punishing you, fashpish b'maisav, means try to see something that makes sense, that Hashem would be at your level. Hashem would be talking to you on the level that you're up to, which would make sense. Hashem should be talking to you about that. If you're working on something and then here you made a mistake, here's something that you messed up, you want Hashem to tell you. You want Hashem. So that's the idea. And we can find ourselves here in this. We can find ourselves in many ways that people that are working on something, they could find Hashem talking back to them in this area, and other things they need to work on to be able to define it. Now, it also helps us understand very, very much that people are not on the same level when it comes to this concept of Yisurim, which we touched it last week. People get very, very upset when you tell them, you know why this and this happened to you? Because you did this wrong. And you met a loose dog because you spoke Lashon Hara. And you spilled your coffee because you got up late. People sometimes get very upset. Now, one of the reasons they get upset is because they're not up to that level. So Hashem is not having that conversation with them. It's not true. Don't think that whatever's happening to you is happening to everybody else. Now, it happens to be that some people go off with this concept. I must mention it because it happens. People go crazy. They say, this happened, this sugar and this and that. That's in the level of it needs a professional. No, mamash. You can't you can't live like messed up and tied up. I mean, the person has a very happy life and very normal life, but they try to work on themselves. That's it. They're very normal and they're very with it. They just try to work on themselves. And they have achnoah. Sometimes they see it simple. Sometimes they say, I don't know. But they're not a whole time living with cheshbonos. I'm just saying it because sometimes, mipam l'pam, this gets stuck onto someone, and we don't mean that. We don't mean that. But if we learn the Aranachal, it gives sensitivity for a person to be able to see that sometimes he doesn't have what's happening, and sometimes he does. It depends on where the person is up to. Sometimes he can't talk to other people this way of talking because it's not meant for that person. Because in this Aranachal, we also understand that if a person is not in a higher level, then Hashem is not having this type of conversation with them. They're not having this type of conversation. So don't be busy telling that person something that's not happening. It's maybe a drop deep, but it is. If you look into it, you'll see. He can be medaber miltza miltza. It depends. And a person that wants to live a more sensitive type of life, and is close with Hashem and is watching, especially when a person takes a certain area, they're really close to Hashem. Hashem is like part of their plan if they're succeeding or not. They're begging to steig in a certain area. And they see a certain success. And they see certain, so they know they're in the middle of a conversation with Hashem before the Yisurim topic. So it makes sense that Hashem should continue on this conversation with them. Now, the Mesilas Yesharim, there's a very interesting Mesilas Yesharim when he talks about Zehirus, which is about being sensitive, about being careful, which the Rabbi Isaac Sher, Mashgiach Slabotka. Rabbi Isaac Sher had a beautiful diuk that the Mesilas Yesharim clearly breaks it up that there are tzadikim and there's beinunim and there's the regular people. And it talks how the Zehirus works by tzadikim, how it works by beinunim, and how it works by the hamoin am. And when he talks about the hamoin am, he mentions because Hashem is medachtik echut asara, and it's like isn't that supposed to be that by tzadikim? So Rabbi Isaac Sher said the above. He said here you see that it's not a concept that's kept strictly for tzadikim. It's a concept that's overall, Now, it depends how detailed the conversation would be on wherever you're up to, it would make sense. But here is another part of this topic, which is mamtik the din. I mean, it makes it soft, the whole topic. When the Gemara says that Hashem is medaktik chut asara, and we mentioned the stories above, it totally doesn't have to mean Yisurim, that's Yisura Iyov. That means suffering and pain and disaster. It's not connected b'chlal. The stories that we mentioned is a proof to that. That means they saw a toilas going out of the ear. The fi madrigal said this wouldn't happen, and it was an oynish for something that happens for the regular people in right away. That's after 22 years, one worm came out of his ear. By the story of Rav Reuven ben Estroli, it says that Hashem said, "Lefi his madrega, Hashem would have to pass by this world for a second, and then it's taken care of." Even the story from the Arizal with the tefillin, it doesn't say what the punishment was. It says that it needed to be taken care of. How many times do you have people that the doctor gives a diagnosis that says, I'm sad to inform you that this needs to be taken care of, and the guy's white like the wall, and then the doctor says, it's a simple procedure. It needs to be taken care of. That's very true. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be now, who knows how many years of, no. It's a simple procedure. Now, it's a sensitive topic, but the concept needs to be clear. A person gets closer and closer to Hashem. The pleasure of being close to Hashem starts being tangible. It's tainuk, and it also comes along with bracha and all types of good things around and around. And I'll say it again, it still doesn't mean that they don't have any issues, because first of all, like we mentioned earlier in this year, every person's life has some kashya de rachmana, which is the code name for things that are, it's much too complicated to understand. Areas, a certain thing in their life that's higher than understanding from a person. That musik. Then there's certain areas in life which Hashem would bring to a person to bring the person to Achnoah. But those are specific areas in their life. A person has millions of details that they know about in their life. Even only health is millions of details, things that are working, things that are doing fine. But in the family of a person, and social, there's so many details in a person's life that's booming business, that's going well. And the more a person is close to Hashem, they are in touch with it, with the Toiv of Hashem. Toiv Hashem lakol. If a person is thanking Hashem and all the above, then they're in touch with that Toiv. They connected to it. So and they enjoy the closeness to Hashem, and they enjoy the feeling of Toiv from the Eibush, and so on. So those people they live their life of they're showered with Hatova from Hashem, and they're humbled that Hashem is giving me so much. I don't know why. I truly don't deserve it. I don't deserve it.
In the letters of the Chazon Ish, that's what you see. It talks about the simcha and the or, even though his life objectively.
Yeah. The Chazon Ish really had a life, be'emes of externally. He had Yisura Mamish. He didn't have children. His wife was sick. He had nothing. He didn't have children. His wife was sick, and he just had money he didn't have. If you look at his hat, that was one hat from the war, and that's it, or whatever it was. That's it. What did he have? But he talks about the simcha and the or. He's living it, and you see in his svarim how much a person enjoyed Olam. He enjoyed life. But we're talking about regular people that don't necessarily have so many Yisurim. Even the bit of Yisurim that they have, doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's going to be world's disaster, And in addition to that, whatever it is, it never said how much is going to be felt by the person. How much a person is going to feel the suffering and the pain of it. Like we spoke about Yosef Das, Yosef Machav in the past. Sometimes people are unaware something's happening. They don't know. So they don't have the pain of it because they don't know. That same concept you could sometimes have by a person that does know, but in the mind it's shelved away somewhere which it doesn't hurt him so much. It doesn't bother him so much. He knows how to put it in the right spot. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about that Hashem is medaktik achotasar, let's go back to when the neshama is going to go from one olam to the next, which we didn't discuss that part of it. We just said if we mainly answered if you want to know if it's fear that Rishonim get away with it and Tzadikim they have to pay for each little bottle of water that they took or whatever. No, don't worry. This guy's paying for it. Don't worry, we'll just wait. But there's another part of the deal. But why would Hashem be so strict? Why would Hashem charge me the nickel and dime the person for the kedukim? Come on. Because the person was davening and he had kavanah b'tfil and he forgot about the tfil? Why would Hashem do that? The answer is very, very simple. The neshama is chachshim for it. The neshama wants to reach the next level of closeness to Hashem once it's up to that level. And Hashem asked the neshama, you want to go further? The neshama says, definitely so. Definitely so. Like, now that I know what it feels like, sure I want. So Hashem says, okay, it's just a procedure. So the neshama is like waiting a lot. Bam is like that. Mamash like that. The same concept, that's really the deepness in that Rabbeinu Bachai that we mentioned in Parshas Kiseitze. I'm just saying the Maramokum, it's a simple piece of Rabbeinu Bachai. That's where it is. He says that every neshama was asked before it came down to the world, which, if it's maskim, the whole journey, this Torah and that thing that's going to happen, this issue, and the neshama says, okay, I want it. That's what the neshama said. What's the pshat? Because the neshama understood the tachlis of it, and where are we reaching to? Which tachlis? The neshama understood that it's only the way to reach to closest to Hashem and Or and Tainug and the best of everything. So the neshama was about that. If this is what it is, then this is what I want. I want to pay for it. You have people, even if they're stingy, b'teva, but then when they want to buy an apartment or whatever it is, and the guy says, okay, it'll cost you 1.5. He says, 1.5? He says, that's the price. He said, let me ask Miley. He calls his broker. The guy says, and once 1.5, it's a steal. But what are you talking about? You can't get such things. So how does he part with the money? It's still painful. He says, but if that's what I'm getting, that's what I want. If this is what it costs, and I know I'm getting something better, then this is what I want. So the neshama saw it. Of course the neshama wanted. Now, here's the nakuda. When the neshama wants it so badly, it's not so painful. Let's pause by this sentence. This is what we want to get to. It's not so painful. Every person, we need examples for this. A person should see how emes it is. How emes it is. Even this example that we just gave. That person, it's hard for him to part with his money. But he has all his friends saying, I don't know how you got this deal. I really don't know. You must have davened. You must have had a good Rosh Hashanah. You should know, I could show you. I'm getting an apartment that's half the size. I'm paying 1.8. Yeah, and every guy that he's asking, he's running to the lawyer. He says, I want it done by tonight. He's scared the guy's going to back out. But where's the painful part? Where's the pain? It gets diluted at kedei that it's possible even to be totally, it could evaporate in ganzen. But there's dargest to it. When a person so badly wants something that they don't see anything on the way, people run out of breath when they want, they don't feel. You would never do it. If someone would make you run stam, you wouldn't stop cursing the guy, like, what are you doing to me? And so on and so on.
just remembered in Boston there was an old Satmar Chassid from Bnei Brak came and they had to remove his leg in the hospital. They had to amputate. And I came to translate for him. So the nurse told me, you have to tell him to slow down in the physical therapy. He's doing so much. He told me, he says, I just had a new anicle and so they gave me this new leg. I want to use it, so I keep going back to the room to do the exercises. It was a painful thing. It was this, but he was...
His exercise that he needed to do is with the new leg?
Yeah, with the prosthetic leg.
Prosthetic leg, no.
Yeah, and he kept going back to do. She said, you have to tell him slow.
Tell him to slow down. Don't do so much exercise. What was the pshat? Because he wanted to be able to use the leg.
Yeah, he wanted to get back there.
But it's very painful. It's very painful. What's the pshat? That's the emes. Now, we had discussed this in the past, that a person doesn't necessarily have to feel the pain the way, it's only because a person is fighting the pain, which causes so much, it causes them to feel it so strong. A person was telling me the other day that wearing a mask on the plane for the few airlines that still have it, he was saying that you got to wear a mask. So you put on the mask, you flew back and forth with the... It's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. But this is what it is. But if you have the guy that's fighting the whole time, every time this to his passing, he's taking it off, he's putting it on, and he's very, very stupid airline. What are they doing? He's feeling the pain more, that's for sure. He really is going through the whole Gehenna of the thing. Get over it and start doing something. You won't remember you're wearing a mask. Again, I'm not saying it's comfortable, but you could watch it and see it. A person is stuck on something, or they get stuck in the mind and start fighting it, then of course they're going to feel the pain more. So we had learned that in the past, b'chlal about Yisur. But now, let's bring it over to the topic of tzadikim when we look at the concept of tzadikim Kadosh Baruch Hu Medak ben Kochot Asara. And we're like, how could Hashem do it? He's such a fine Yid. How could Hashem do it to him? A person is saying, I'm fine. I'm telling you, I'm fine. I have questions. I'm scared to ask my questions. Every time when tragedy hits, people get they start asking questions and zachen. We have to learn it. Bizman shel yishuv hadas. It should only be psudas tov. Sometimes you see people that are just watching the people asking the questions. They really ask tough questions. It's not so tough. It's tough because you don't know the answer, and it's tough because you're watching it in a painful spot. You see the person asking the question with pain. It's not geschmack to talk about the topic, but when whatever happens, and the people that they didn't get prepared to such, their emunah was always shallow. They didn't learn the topic, and they start. It's very painful to watch, and no one should ever have to watch such pain. But it's not just tough questions. Now it's not easy to talk to them. They don't want to talk to you right now. It's not the time to talk to them. Now you just have to comfort them in their pain. But here's one of those answers. When you're watching tzaddik, let's say the person's not part of it, and you're saying, how could it be that he was such a tzaddik? He was such a tzaddik. Adarabba va'adarabba. Everybody is Hashem's only son. And everybody is going to reach the goal. Everybody's up to a different part in the race. It's not a race, but everybody's up to somewhere else. And with so many cheshbonos that we don't make cheshbonos, for sure not. But it's important for us to know that you don't know where the guy is up to. But if you want to look at the broad picture, be aware that the neshama so badly wants to just go to the next step, go to the next level. And that's what it's called, that some tzaddikim, we know, they left the world early. They finished. They were mashlim themselves. The Reb Shalom Shachner from Probish, the son from the Magid, the son from the Malach, Einikel from the Magid, the Mezitch, the father of the Heilige Rizhina, by 33 or by 34. They had two brothers. And so many tzaddikim said, they finished. They finished the tafkid on the world. The neshama is chalashing to go to the next step. And this doesn't finish when the neshama finishes the Olam Hazeh. This continues on. This continues weiter and weiter when they want to go to the next Olam, and it goes much stronger. Because that's when the Tainug is there with the biggest koyach. So they're feeling it, and they're running with that leg. They're just running, and they're saying, okay, whatever it is, we'll take care of it. What do I have to take care of? Okay, I'm signing. Sometimes you see people that get messed up in court and whatever, but then they want to leave the country. Whatever. And they really got messed up, whatever. They sign all the papers like that. That's what it is. But how could it be? And it's not painful. Because they're looking at the flight. When a person is looking at the flight, it's not even painful. So don't be so worried for the tzaddik, and so making cheshbon shemayim when it comes to tzadikim daking chut asara. There's a system, and the system is that whenever a person is going to reach a certain level, the neshama is going to want to go to the next level, and it's not going to end because it's going to feel closer and closer to that shukah. And this procedure is on the way. This procedure, don't be scared. Don't be scared of those procedures because Hashem created a system. Hashem knows that that's how it's supposed to be, and He doesn't even feel it. He does, like so many. Zachar was so worried sometimes with people, and you come in, you speak to them, you see, why are you taking it harder than that person on themselves? So the same way they could see it, down people, you could see it as in everything has a cheshbon, and Hashem takes care of His tzadikim. He really loves them and makes sure that they have everything that they need. Sure.
Rebbe Biederman gave an interesting mashal. He said, a poor man comes to a rich man's house, knocks on the door, asks for an adava. The rich man says to him, give me 10 shekels. So the poor man knows he's going to get 20 shekels. If the rich man says to him, give me 100 shekels, then he knows he's going to get 200 shekels. So the more Hashem demands from you, the more He's going to give you.
The more He's going to give you, yeah. It's just showing the Gewaldig.